the real story behind Elizabeth Holmes' downfall and the lessons you can't afford to ignore. Elizabeth created a startup once valued at $9 billion. This is the story of how it all collapsed in one of Silicon Valley's biggest fraud scandals. We're going to examine each lie, every inflated claim, and all the decisions that ultimately led to her collapse. Watch through to the end for a cheat sheet of entrepreneurial mistakes that can destroy any business. Elizabeth was once celebrated as the young visionary who promised to reinvent the future of medicine before becoming one of Silicon Valley's most infamous cautionary tales. Born into an ambitious family with deep ties to politics and business, she grew up believing she was destined to build something world-changing. That belief drove her relentlessly, pushing her toward elite institutions, relentless work, and a fierce desire to leave a mark on the world. At just 19 years old, she dropped out of Stanford University, convinced that traditional paths were too slow for the scale of her vision. With that decision, she founded Theranos, a startup she claimed would revolutionize blood testing by running hundreds of tests from just a single drop of blood. She wasn't just building a company, she was building an identity. She deliberately styled herself as the next of Steve Jobs, from her signature black turtlenecks to her bold, reality-bending claims about what her technology could do. And it worked. Investors were captivated by her confidence, her secrecy, and her carefully crafted genius founder persona. She raised hundreds of millions of dollars from some of the most elite and influential figures in the world. Former secretaries of state, billionaires, media moguls, and legendary business leaders. Theranos eventually reached a jaw-dropping valuation of $9 billion, and she became the youngest self-made female billionaire on paper. From the start, she understood the incredible power of storytelling. She didn't just pitch a product, she painted a future where diagnosing diseases would be as simple as a finger prick, where medical testing became cheaper, faster, and more accessible to millions. It was a vision so compelling that people wanted it to be true, and she knew exactly how to feed that desire. Her image was just as carefully constructed as her narrative. Inspired by her idol, she embraced the black turtleneck uniform, projecting an air of focus, discipline, and genius. This personal branding became part of the Theranos mythology, reinforcing her image as a once-in-a-generation innovator. Behind closed doors, she demonstrated a sharp mastery of investor psychology. She understood how to build urgency, how to exploit fear of missing out, and how to use bold claims to override skepticism. When investors pushed for answers, she used secrecy as a form of mystique, framing her lack of transparency not as a red flag, but as proof of world-changing innovation that needed protection. The media amplified everything. Major outlets crowned her the next Steve Jobs, the youngest self-made female billionaire, the visionary who would transform healthcare. Every headline strengthened her credibility, making deeper scrutiny feel unnecessary. Theranos soared, not because its technology worked, but because her story did. It's a powerful reminder of a hard truth. Storytelling can build an empire, but without substance, it becomes fraud. The truth looked nothing like the myth Elizabeth constructed. Her rise and fall reveal a powerful theme of brilliance, ambition, and deception. Her journey is a masterclass in how far vision can go and how quickly it can collapse when it's built on illusions. Stick around, as we're just getting started on breaking down the mistakes she made. Elizabeth's first and most devastating mistake was building an entire multi-billion-dollar company on a promise she knew she couldn't keep. At the core of Theranos' mythology was the bold claim that a single drop of blood could run hundreds of tests instantly, cheaply, and more accurately than traditional labs. It was a breakthrough the world desperately wanted, but it was also something Theranos had never actually achieved. Instead of admitting the technology wasn't ready, she exaggerated the device's capabilities, presenting early prototypes as if they were fully functional, scalable, and clinically reliable. To reinforce this illusion, Theranos filed patents that sounded revolutionary but were often misleading, describing ideas as if they were finished products. Investors, dazzled by the technical language and enormous potential, believed they were funding a medical marvel rather than a concept still stuck in development. Inside the company, the deception grew even deeper. Fake demos were staged for investors and partners using pre-run results or conventional lab equipment hidden behind the scenes. Machines that didn't work were portrayed as operational. Data was selectively cherry-picked, and failures were swept out of sight. The appearance of progress mattered more than actual progress. This strategy kept money flowing, but it also locked the company into a cycle of escalating dishonesty. The more she promised, the more she had to cover up, and the further Theranos drifted from reality. Investors, employees, and even patients were misled by a vision that existed only in PowerPoints and press releases. Elizabeth's downfall began long before the media exposed her. It began the moment she realized she could sell a dream more easily than she could build the technology behind it. And it leads to a critical lesson every entrepreneur must remember. Never sell a product that doesn't exist. Don't go anywhere. We've got more of her mistakes coming up. Elizabeth's second catastrophic mistake was building Theranos like a cult, where loyalty mattered more than truth and fear replaced accountability. Inside the company, secrecy wasn't just a policy, it was a way of life. Employees were separated into isolated teams, each knowing only a tiny piece of the technology, making it nearly impossible for anyone to see the full picture. This extreme compartmentalization created confusion, mistrust, and a culture where people felt constantly watched. Rather than fostering collaboration, she and her inner circle enforced secrecy to keep employees from realizing how far the company was from delivering on its promises. Theranos operated under a fear-based leadership style that punished questions and rewarded blind obedience. Engineers who raised technical concerns were labeled as disloyal or uncommitted. Scientists who challenged unrealistic deadlines were pushed out. The message was clear: fall in line or you don't belong here. Employees learned to stay silent, even when they knew something was deeply wrong. Transparency, one of the most critical ingredients in any innovative company, was non-existent. Data was hidden, failures were disguised, and internal communication was tightly controlled. Only she and a select few had access to the full story, and even they manipulated the truth to maintain control. Those who left faced aggressive legal threats designed to intimidate them into silence. Former employees were followed, warned, and pressured not to speak out. Instead of addressing internal problems, Theranos tried to bury them, creating a bubble of fear that kept the company insulated from reality. This toxic environment didn't just weaken Theranos, it destroyed it from the inside. A company built on fear cannot innovate, cannot communicate, and ultimately cannot survive. The lesson is simple and unforgiving. A business powered by fear collapses from within. Make sure to watch all the way through, as you won't believe the 3 other mistakes we found she committed. Elizabeth's third fatal mistake was believing vision mattered more than expertise and dismissing the very people who could have saved her company. From the earliest days of Theranos, experienced scientists and lab professionals repeatedly warned that the technology wasn't working. The chemistry was unstable, the devices were unreliable, and the results were dangerously inaccurate. Experts inside the company raised red flags again and again, explaining that the engineering challenges were far more complicated than she wanted to admit. But instead of slowing down or reassessing the science, she pushed forward, convinced that determination alone could force innovation into existence. She treated skepticism as disloyalty rather than essential feedback. When experts questioned her claims or pointed out impossible timelines, she brushed them aside or removed them entirely. Brilliant scientists with decades of experience were replaced with people who were loyal, young, or inexperienced enough not to challenge her. This shift created an echo chamber where bad news disappeared, replaced by optimism ungrounded in reality. Rather than building a culture of scientific rigor, she created an environment where technical concerns were labeled as obstacles instead of warnings. As a result, critical problems went unaddressed, data was ignored, failures were repeated, and the gap between what Theranos promised and what it could actually deliver grew wider every day. Had she listened to the experts she hired, Theranos might have pivoted, improved, or even succeeded in a smaller, realistic form. But by choosing loyalty over competence and belief over evidence, she sealed the company's fate long before the outside world caught on. Elizabeth's downfall teaches a lesson every entrepreneur must internalize. Hire experts and actually listen to them. Don't miss the finale. It's going to blow your mind. It's where you will discover how her story can impact yours. Elizabeth's fourth major mistake was treating hype as progress, building a global spotlight around technology that never actually worked. At the height of Theranos' rise, she became a media phenomenon. Magazine covers hailed her as a revolutionary genius, the youngest self-made female billionaire, and the visionary who would transform healthcare forever. These glowing portrayals weren't based on verified results or scientific breakthroughs. They were built on her charisma, secrecy, and storytelling. Every headline amplified the illusion that Theranos was already changing the world, even though its core technology was failing behind closed doors. She took the stage at TED Talks, delivering bold promises with unwavering confidence. Her speeches were polished, inspiring, and persuasive, but they lacked the scientific substance that real innovation requires. The world wasn't hearing the truth, it was hearing a performance. Meanwhile, the company's board was stacked with former politicians, diplomats, and military leaders, high-profile names who brought enormous credibility but almost no scientific expertise. Their presence impressed investors and journalists, but it also meant that few people at the highest levels even understood the technology well enough to question it. Instead of being challenged, she was celebrated. What made this even more dangerous was what Theranos refused to do: submit its devices to peer review, publish real data, or allow independent evaluation. In the scientific world, transparency is the foundation of trust, but she avoided scrutiny at all costs because scrutiny would have exposed the truth. By relying on media hype, celebrity endorsements, and political star power, Elizabeth built a brand instead of a breakthrough. She created the appearance of success without the substance to sustain it. And in the end, the spotlight she chased became the spotlight that exposed her. It all reinforces one critical truth: hype is not a business strategy. Keep watching, because the best part is yet to come at the end. Elizabeth's fifth and most destructive mistake was turning lies into a survival strategy, each one bigger than the last, until the entire system finally collapsed. When Theranos' technology failed to produce reliable results, she didn't slow down or reset. Instead, she doubled down, using deception to keep the company alive. The most damaging example was the Walgreens partnership. Theranos secured the deal using carefully staged data, selectively chosen results, and demonstrations designed to hide the fact that the Edison machines simply didn't work. Walgreens, unaware of the manipulation, invested heavily and prepared to roll out testing centers across the country, putting real patients at risk. Inside the lab, the truth was even darker. Instead of using their own devices, Theranos secretly relied on modified Siemens analyzers, traditional machines from established manufacturers. These were adjusted in ways they were never meant to be, producing inconsistent and sometimes dangerously inaccurate results. Yet she continued to present these outcomes as proof that her proprietary technology was functioning flawlessly. To maintain the illusion, lab data was manipulated, outliers were deleted, failed tests were rerun until they appeared successful, and reports were crafted to appear compliant and accurate. Employees who questioned these practices were silenced or pushed out, and the leadership continued feeding investors numbers that had no basis in scientific reality. Each lie bought the company a little more time. Each fabrication kept money flowing and public confidence intact. But the web of deceit grew so large that it became impossible to control. And when the truth finally surfaced, the collapse was immediate and catastrophic. Elizabeth's downfall proves a timeless and brutal lesson. One lie creates 10 more until the truth explodes. You'll want to see what happens next. Trust me. Elizabeth's empire of lies came crashing down when one relentless journalist decided to follow the trail of inconsistencies and found the truth nobody else dared to report. John Carreyrou, an investigative reporter at the Wall Street Journal, began probing Theranos after receiving tips from insiders concerned about the company's dangerous inaccuracies. Whistleblowers inside the lab risked their careers and reputations to reveal how Edison machines were failing, how tests were manipulated, and how patient safety was being compromised. Their courage provided the evidence him needed to expose the deception at the heart of Theranos. The articles published in 2015 sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley. Suddenly, the company that had once seemed untouchable faced scrutiny from regulators. The FDA investigated the faulty devices, CMS, or the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, examined lab violations, and the SEC later pursued civil fraud charges against Elizabeth and her partner. The carefully cultivated mystique, the media hype, and the boardroom politics could no longer shield the company from accountability. The exposure was swift and brutal, demonstrating how a culture built on secrecy and deception is inherently fragile. No amount of branding, celebrity endorsements, or investor clout can protect a business that prioritizes image over truth. Theranos' rise and fall underline a critical warning for entrepreneurs. When secrecy becomes a core part of your business model, it's not a sign of cleverness. It's a sign of a fundamental flaw. The pickup here is, if your business model requires secrecy, it's probably broken. Her downfall reached its final chapter in a courtroom, where the brilliant narrative she once sold to the world was replaced by hard evidence, whistleblower testimony, and the undeniable reality of her deception. After years of investigations and legal battles, she was formally charged with multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. During the trial, prosecutors detailed how she knowingly misled investors, partners, and patients by presenting false data and hiding the failures of Theranos' technology. Witness after witness, former employees, doctors, and even high-profile investors exposed the truth behind her carefully engineered facade. In early 2022, the jury convicted her on several counts of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud, marking one of the most high-profile fraud convictions in Silicon Valley history. The sentencing that followed was a dramatic turning point. She was given a multi-year federal prison sentence, a stark contrast to the glamorous image she once cultivated as a tech prodigy. For many in the public, the verdict felt like justice finally served. Others were shocked at how far she had fallen, from billionaire icon to convicted felon. The story dominated headlines, sparking debates about startup culture, accountability, and the dangers of hype-driven innovation. Meanwhile, Theranos, already gutted by investigations, lawsuits, and financial collapse, was officially dissolved. What was once valued at billions disappeared entirely, leaving behind a legacy of broken trust and a cautionary tale for the tech world. Elizabeth's trial and sentencing marked the definitive end of the myth she built and the beginning of a long reckoning for Silicon Valley's obsession with fake it till you make it. It is now time to reveal what you can take up from her disaster of a story, which might even surprise you. Elizabeth's story is more than a cautionary tale. It's a roadmap for what every entrepreneur should avoid if they want lasting success. The first lesson is clear: validate before you hype. She built an empire on promises of technology that didn't exist. No amount of media coverage, investor enthusiasm, or branding can replace solid, verifiable results. Entrepreneurs must ensure their product or service works before claiming it will change the world. Next, transparency builds trust. Theranos thrived on secrecy, isolating employees and hiding failures. True innovation thrives in open environments where questions are welcomed, mistakes are acknowledged, and solutions are collaboratively developed. Without transparency, credibility evaporates quickly. Her rise also highlights that ethics matter more than funding. She secured hundreds of millions from elite investors, but ethical shortcuts, lying to investors, manipulating data, endangering patients, ultimately led to her downfall. Money cannot substitute for integrity. Leadership requires accountability. Her fear-based culture stifled dissent and punished honesty. Strong leaders hold themselves and their teams responsible, fostering a culture where truth and competence guide decisions. Finally, don't chase shortcuts. Innovation takes time. She tried to accelerate a complex medical breakthrough into a headline-ready success story. True breakthroughs require patience, iteration, and respect for expertise. The collapse of Theranos is a stark reminder that ambition alone cannot replace substance. Vision is powerful, but without honesty, diligence, and respect for process, even the brightest star can crash spectacularly. The ultimate takeaway is to build responsibly, lead ethically, and innovate with integrity, because the world can see through hype faster than you think. Elizabeth built a billion-dollar dream, but she ignored the truth. And in business, the truth always wins. If you're on the verge of realizing your own dream, check out the useful links we've included in the description below that might just help you in your endeavor.